Yeah, yeah, greetings and revolutionary greetings to you all, comrades. Thank you very much for your attendance. I'm sorry for my lateness. Just been trying to balance the Pan-African works. I've been moderating the One Map Africa conference for the last 6 hours, and I think I had to excuse myself to join this one. I'm almost coming to another. But yes, let's join our conversation today. We'll be speaking briefly on the African industrial African industrial in fact it's African industrial development of Africa for the purpose of Africa economic transformation. So that's what we are supposed to be discussing today. I'll just do a brief presentation on this, and then maybe we can discuss some of the few issues of what you think about this. So the objective of my presentation is actually to explore the state of industrial development in Africa, or probably to identify the gaps and also to propose strategies and policies for sustainable industrialization that can drive African unity and economic sovereignty. So the key aspect of why we need industrialization of Africa is for African unity and also for Africa economic sovereignty, so that whatever products we get in our industries is to help us to be sovereign in terms of our economic independence, so that we don't depend on products and materials or whatever you call them, products that come from Europe, but rather so that our industries can produce products that can be best for us, and industries can also produce products that can help us. So thank you very much, Mr. Mera, and yeah, thank you for holding the conversation for us. Brother Kwame will be joining us shortly once he's home. So let me go deep a bit on this. My presentation is in terms of statistics. So as the introduction part is that industrial development, of course, in any country is a cornerstone, but for Africa, it's a cornerstone for our economic transformation. And it's also enabling the continent to move beyond raw material exports and towards value-added manufacturing and job creation. For example, just to be a bit clear with this, most of our material or products in Africa is still being exported as raw products, and I think all of us know this. And when product goes the raw products, probably there's more of advantage that the receiving end have over our raw product. For example, look even for the mineral like oil. When oil is being exported out there as a raw oil, then it's a lot that is being produced from that oil. So some of our countries have discovered oil, but we don't have oil manufacturing center or plant, apart from, of course, what Dangote is doing in Nigeria. Some of us are just taking our oil out for refining, then bring it back again and sell it to our people, and that makes it expensive. So by fostering industrialization, Africa can achieve economic self-reliance, because the more important thing for the African freedom today is self-reliance economically. We can also reduce dependence on foreign powers. We cannot now be taking our product to foreign countries now for manufacturing or whatever else, but we can do the manufacturing in Africa. And we can also build resilient economics that benefits our people and our people in diaspora. So this presentation will actually examine the current state of African industry, the key gaps, as I've said, the opportunity, and probably the possible action policies. So the current state of African development is that as per the number of industries, just get these statistics, very important as we'll be starting our conversation. In the manufacturing center, Africa has approximately 500,000 industries. Those are 500,000 manufacturing enterprises. And this is according to 2023 UNIDO data. And with over 80% of those being just small and medium enterprise industries. 80% of that 500,000, they're just small industries. Now, key factors here or key sectors in this industry include, we have textile, for example, in Ethiopia, Hawassa Industrial Park, we also have agro-processing, for example, Nigeria food processing plant, and we also have cement production, for example, the Dangote cement production, that is having branches across 10 countries in Africa. Now, in terms of regional distribution, the East African region is having around 120,000 enterprises, led by Kenya and Ethiopia. So in the East Africa, more industries are in Kenya and Ethiopia. In the West Africa, if you look at it, we have 200,000 enterprises, with majority being in Nigeria and Ghana as a hub. In the Southern Africa is 100,000 enterprises, but dominated purely on South Africa. In the Southern Africa, most of industries, 90% of industry are in South Africa. In the North and Central of Africa, there are small industrial bases, of course, with Egypt and Algeria leading in the northern part of Africa. In terms of industrial capacity, what we call manufacturing value added, MVA, Africa manufacturing value added per capita is or was $200 by 2023, compared to the global manufacturing capacity of $1,200. The sub-Saharan Africa actually contributes only 1.9% to the global manufacturing value added. In terms of capacity utilization, the average capacity utilization is actually between 40 to 60% across African industries, compared to 70 to 80% in Asia, according to Africa Development Bank, and underutilization is due to energy shortage. Those are the factors that affect our underutilization: energy shortage, outdated machineries, and supply chain issues. In terms of employment, you realize that the industrial sector employs 15 million people, which is 5% of African workforce, far below Asia, where over 20 million or 20% of its population are under the industrial sector. In Africa, it's only 5%. In terms of export contribution, the manufactured goods make up only 18% of Africa's export, compared to 70% for Asia. So over 82% of what you export is not purely manufactured goods, it's raw material. Now, in terms of key gaps, there are key gaps, in fact, of infrastructural deficit. So there's unreliable power. For example, over 200 million Africans still lack electricity access. And there's also poor transport network. For industries to grow, they need power and access of network, road network. So this also poor transport network is actually increasing the production cost by 30 to 40%. There's also skills shortage. For example, only 20% of African workers have technical skills required for modern industries. There's access to finance. So small, medium enterprise businesses face only 330 billion financial gap annually. So those SMEs cannot access $330 billion financial deficit annually. This limits its industrial expansion. In terms of technology lag, only 10% of African industries use industrial 4.0 technologies. For example, the AI or IIoT, or even compared to the developed countries that are using more technology in their industry, more technology. For example, in my country, still the sugarcane production, there's something called jaggery, which is being used in some of the production. It's still manual. There's also issues with policy fragmentation. So there's a lack of harmonized industrial policy across African Union and African Union member states, and this is hindering regional value chain. So there's some of the mitigation strategies for industrial gaps include: one, infrastructure development. So how do you prioritize renewable energy, for example, solar and wind power in our industrial parks, so that we can reduce the cost of energy by at least 20%? How do you expand the program for infrastructure development in Africa, the PIDA? You remember sometimes back we talked about the PIDA, to improve transport network and also cutting down the logistics by 15%. Skill development, we need to establish technical training institutes in partnership with the various private sectors and aiming to train at least 5 million workers of Africa, either by 2030 or annually. We need also to integrate STEM education in our national curriculum, targeting at least 50% STEM enrollment in every year or by 2035. Financial solution is that we need to create a Pan-African Industrial Fund to provide at least $100 billion in low-interest loans for SMEs. Because today you talk about those small businesses. Where do they get the loan? Nowhere. So in order also to leverage on diaspora remittance, for example, at least we get around $90 billion annually for industrial investment. So if we can target diaspora remittance towards development in industry, so diasporas can send their remittance to target various industries, so as bonds, that can really help us as well. Then we also need to do technology adoption. We need to promote technological adoption in our industry so that we can digitize our mechanization and machineries in our industries. And we need also to harmonize policies. some of the potential opportunity we have is that there's abundant resources in Africa. Africa can hold almost 30% of global mineral reserves. For example, we have 50% of cobalt, 90% of platinum. Now, these provide raw materials for industry like battery, manufacturing, and so on. We also have a youthful demographic for, of course, 60% of Africa. That's currently of 1.54 million population. It's under 25. So we still have a vibrant youth demographic that can still provide labor for us. Also, the AfCFTA is actually targeting to have 4.3 million, to unlock 4.3 trillion market of Africa. But again, it's about, do we own the industries? Do we control the industries? Then there's also global demand. So we have a lot of what you can explore here. There's also diaspora expertise. At least you can get some support from diaspora expertise and our friends in diaspora. Then also we need to work on regional recommendations. For example, policy recommendations to have regional industrial hub. So even if you can establish 10 regional industrial hubs by 2030, you can be somewhere far. We can also increase incentives for green industries, and we can also target diaspora engagement. So these are some of the few issues. For example, on the trade policy alignment, we look at harmonizing tariffs under AfCFTA, also ban raw material export for critical minerals in Africa. We need to ban that. We need also to do education and innovation. We invest a lot of our investment, because now if you see, if we can invest much on our education and innovation, can then improve what we produce in terms of targeting education in STEM and skills that are needed for our industry. We can also work on our governance reform so that we can strengthen issues of anti-corruption. Because even if you manufacture here, still the money you leave here still run out. They go and spend it out there. They call it foreign reserves and so many other things. They steal it from here and take it there. So in conclusion, that industrial development is pivotal for African economic sovereignty and unity. And by addressing infrastructural skills and financial gaps, if we leverage abundant resources and implement strategic policies, then Africa can build a robust industrial base that benefits our people as Africans and also the diaspora. And the AfCFTA, youth demographic, global demand, opportunities we have, all these are actually to our advantage. Let's just commit to policies and action that then can transform Africa into a powerhouse. By that, either 2063, as they say, Agenda 2063, or even before 2063. So basically, comrades, this is what I wanted to present briefly on the topic of industrial development in Africa. And with this, permit me to open the floor for contributions and for conversation on the same line. Thank you very much. Anybody want to come in? Anybody want to contribute to this or share their thoughts on this? Please feel free to proceed. Yes, General Anunnaki, please go ahead.
Yeah, give thanks, man. Give thanks, son of the league. Make some respect, man. Yes, my lords. Yeah, give thanks for the wonderful works. You always amaze me with blessed. Okay, first of all, before I comment, can you send this document on WhatsApp? I want it as a PDF for myself. Is it possible?
Yes, I'll send it probably after the meeting. I can be able to send it immediately.
Okay. And then on comment on the presentation. First of all, I'm highly disappointed on the stats. Yeah, 5% is a joke. Is a joke, 5%. But I'm not surprised coming from the white elites. Okay, so basically, let me ask a question to you. Are you even interested personally to be part of the industrial sector as an individual, or are you just a political man?
No, you see, rather, personally, I've been interested in how I can expand my skills. You know, I operate I do shoe repairs as a cobbler. You know that. And I've been thinking that Africans put on shoes all over. So I've been thinking on how maybe in some bigger future on how I can be able to expand the shoe repair to be more of an industry, so that we can then be using the skin or we have here, the leather we have here, so that maybe in one day I'll have an industry that manufactures shoes for Africa. I'm thinking in that direction as well. So how can we be able to ensure that the shoes we put on our feet are actually manufactured in Africa? So in my line of that, what I do currently, I'm still here thinking on how I can expand that into an industrial base. Thank you. Back to you, General.
Yeah, yes, give thanks, son of the league. Thanks. Okay, I know I didn't know. That's interesting. Okay, which comes to the follow-up question then. So, with that being the case of you, with that good vision, now tell me, what are the challenges that that you are facing in order for that to materialize into, maybe even if it's a medium industrial place? What is the problem besides money? What is the problem that you are facing that is hindering that to take place?
Basically, the first thing will be money, because there are policies that then are put in place, for example, and money is what will help me probably acquire the machines that are needed, because the machines are also very expensive. Some of the machines are not actually produced in Kenya, so you have to import the machines. And second thing, the skills is not an issue, because one thing I believe is that in Africa, it's very easy for one to get the skills, especially the little work I'm telling you I'm doing, for example, the shoe repair. We don't find it very hard to train people on that, because I'm looking at where the material is ready, the raw material is available in the country. There's a lot of leather here, so the material is not an issue. What will be an issue is probably the capital to get what is required. Because, for example, if I talk of my industry, I'm talking about the shoe repair, the shoe industry, or the leather industry, especially for shoes. One is that Africa is rich in terms of the leather. So you have the sheep, you have the cows, you have the goats. So you can get the leather from all that. Second is that we are also having the demand, because everybody wants to put on a shoe. And what will be costing is electricity, basically to make the what you call the leather is electricity. The sole of the shoe soles are made in Africa, especially in Kenya. Here there are industries in the city that make the sole, the shoe sole that we now put on the leather. Those are easily available, but I'm also thinking in that line of also even having an industry that can also make the sole, so that we make a complete shoe. And those soles are made out of plastic and waste products, which are also available. So basically, I'll tell you that the only thing that's missing is the resources, especially in terms of finance. But the resources that are needed, the material are available, the people can do the work available, and everything else that are needed are available. Just probably the capital to help on that, and then the demand is out there and it's readily available. Back to you, Brother General Inaki.
Thank you, my brother. Give thanks, son of the league. Now, my last contribution on this matter would be, before the other one come in, will be, now that you've given me these two answers, now it comes to that of the policies. In one of the meetings I had here in the workshop, fundraising workshop, I'm here to answer the NCSG, how it went. What the problem we have, let me make an example of here. My queen, she has a company of fashion. She's doing fashion. So I'm from the Xhosa ethnicity. So we have our Xhosa attire, you see, that we run on the market here in South Africa. Yeah, and it's making a lot of money. But now the problem we are having is that the Xhosa women who are making these clothes, these Xhosa attires, you see, they have the resources, as you say, there is the resources for leather. And as well, I'm making an example on this side of fashion. There is resources. They are sewing these Xhosa attire with their bead and patterns and everything. And then after their dresses are done, because obviously you made this dress, ne? Even if you used machinery, because some of them they do have machinery, some they still use the traditional hand sewing. But even those who have, let's say, okay, for the sake of this argument of reasoning, sorry, not argument, is that the ones who are using machinery, ne, when they are done, let's say for an example, reasonably so, they will charge their Xhosa attire dress, let's say for 1.2 yabo, on the market price in South Africa. And bear in mind, South Africa is a free market system. Yabo, capitalist free market system. So now the Chinese, now because China now is the biggest economy now in the world, now there's a lot of Chinese now here in South Africa, more especially in everywhere, man. Let me not say even say especially in my neighborhood. Every neighborhood we have Chinese. Now the Chinese they come there. What happened? I'll just make one example and close. One Chinese woman came. She bought the Xhosa dress. Ne? She looked around. She bought the Xhosa dress and went. 3 weeks later, ne, the shop next to the shop of this Xhosa woman who rightfully so selling the Xhosa attire, the Chinese who bought that Xhosa dress went and made a replica of those dresses of the Xhosa attires and sold them at half the price she was selling, which is the Chinese, she was selling for 1.2, 1,200 rand. The Chinese sold it for 500 rand. And they sold it at a more massive scale because obviously China has bigger machines and stuff. So I think I think also for you, you will correct me, my brother, because you know best. The biggest problem, even if money, you will have money. The biggest problem right now we will having with these westernized governments we are under is that China or any competitor who sees that, hey, brother Pigpins, Pigpin, maybe some of your brand of the shoes, the Pigpin shoes. They say, hey, those Pigpin shoes, they are making a lot of money in Kenya, and let me buy and make a copy and then sell them at half price. You see, it will kill your market. How will you then, or how can you, or how can we, as emerging young African industrialists, even those who've been here, can able to tackle that problem, my lord? And I close here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You've raised a very important question. That's where government come in. One, with the policies. And I'll say it in two ways. One, policies that affect the cost of production. Because the reason why Chinese products are very cheap is that the cost of producing those products are also very cheap. Which means, for example, cost of electricity in China might be very cheap. Cost of logistics and everything else might be very cheap. They might not be having material, so they will import the material from for example, South Africa. But when they do the production cost is totally cheap. Now, in Africa, for example, the reason why some of our brand products are very expensive is because of the cost of production. But beyond that, I also believe sometimes it's because of us wanting too much return. Because basically, I'll give you an example. In my normal way of doing a shoe repair, so if I make the thread around your shoe, if you buy a new shoe, you know, you have to mend it all around. You put a new thread all around. That thread all around the shoe in Kenya is basically, I will only use a thread, the shoe thread of roughly 5 Kenya shillings. 4 threads are enough for me to make your pair of shoe all around. If it's a new shoe, so I'm just making a new thread on top so that it doesn't get off easily. But you see, some of us here do that work I know how much we sometimes some of them charge. Like yesterday, I was back in the shop because I will still go back sometimes to do the shoe repairs, or sometimes I'm in the barber shop. So the old man whom we work with for some time, some young man brought a shoe of football shoe, and he wanted the thread to be made all around. Then I think he came with the mother of the sister, and they asked how much is that. Do you know my friend who do the shoe repair told that woman that one is 200 shillings. 200 shillings, while the thread is only 5 shillings. And it can only cost us, or cost the old man around only 30 minutes maximum, or even 15 minutes, or 20 to 30 minutes. So see, sometimes you cannot even appropriate or to give justification on why do you charge that amount. So sometimes, in that case, what is the cost of production there? There's no cost. I don't use electricity. I use my hand. So there's ability of one that we Africans sometimes need more or want more return. And secondly, is the cost of production that also make our products go very high. But you want again, how comes a product that has been flown by air from China to Kenya can still be very cheap? While a product that is produced in the same place, you want to sell it very expensively. Second thing that I was to talk about in the element is government policies. For example, the Republic of Ethiopia is having a very serious policy. So Ethiopia, and I think other countries, for example, East Africa, that agree to ban what you call mitumba clothes. You know the mitumba clothes, the second-hand clothes. Because we say that we cannot develop our industries for clothing if we allow second-hand clothes. I mean, in fact, the president of Uganda don't put on both clothes. Museveni, have you ever seen what Museveni puts on? He's putting on is a white shirt that is actually made in Uganda. The former president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, is also putting on some of his shirts that are made in Kenya. He doesn't put on more suits anymore. But again, even if they're made here, the cost is very high. So even if you could wish of, as a black South African, you could wish of buying those clothes or kitenge next to your fellow South African, but because you charge expensive and the Chinese is charging cheaply, where would you go to? Because you're a poor man, you're still trying to preserve your money, you'll go to a cheaper one. You'll never care whether you buy from your sister or not, but you go to a cheaper one. This product has been here, for example, people are saying, buy Africa for Africa. Others are saying, buy Kenya for Kenya, or buy Kenya, build Kenya. But again, at the end of the day, at the stage where we are in terms of our development and in terms of our income, people don't even go to an extra mile to think about the quality, but rather think about the price. So they end up buying it. But I think policy, like I was mentioning, Ethiopia is having what you call a protectionist policy. So Ethiopia doesn't allow an open market so much. Ethiopia insists that if you want to sell something in their country, either go there and set industry there and make it there. But if you want to export things directly to Ethiopia, it's very hard. And I think that's a policy Africa must also adopt. If somebody wants to produce something for Africa, do it in Africa. So set up industries here, employ your brothers and sisters, sell your product here, so that even if you give you money by buying it, majority of that is already benefiting the country. But if you're coming with your thing that is already manufactured out there and then sell to us and go back, I don't think that is very important. That's very good for us. So there's those elements, cost of production, there's element of maybe need for more money, and there's also an element of government policy to protect our industries. So all this together can affect how we move forward as a people. Let me hear what Sawindo has to say. Sawindo?
Yes, Brother BJ. Excuse my background a little bit. I have two comments to make, and General Anunnaki has brought on a very credible point. You see, free market economy should be free market economy for equals. Chinese competing amongst themselves, or Chinese competing against the US, or Chinese competing against Russia. That's free market economy. Now you have a world giant in the name of China, or a world economic giant in the name of Russia, competing with small to medium enterprises in Namibia with a population of 2 million. Who's going to win? Those guys have already conquered the world, and now they come and compete on the ground with my small business of repairing shoes. Just like that example was given of a Xhosa woman, a Xhosa attire business that is competing with the Chinese. The local selling it for 1.2 and Chinese coming in and selling it for $500. That is killing the market. And every economy, the lifeline of every economy is the small and medium enterprises. And if they are not protected, then that economy is sold out to the highest bidder, and those are the world powers. So the problem is not the cost of production per se. The problem is Africa do not protect and defend their economies, especially the small and medium. So for as long as we cannot protect our small enterprises, our economies will not be able to grow, because those giants come, milk, and repatriate the money and the funds. And then there will be no circulation of funds locally, and then the economy will not grow. So our governments have got their priorities in the wrong places. So that's why we cannot wait for 2063 while our economies are being milked, while our resources are being milked. So either our governments protect our industries, or they must make way for those who will come and protect the small and medium enterprises. We talk about foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment does not give, jobs to people repairing shoes, to the ordinary person in the street. Only those small industries can sustain economies. That's my wrong take on all of this. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Sawindo, because you're also pointing at something very important, that the competition and the equality amongst the business trade. Because you see, sometimes, as you say, the giants of the industries can sell very low because they produce in masses. But the Xhosa lady who produce less cannot sell cheaply. And that's what is the balance of what people say, either you go for, what do you call it, a wholesale price or a retail price. If you look at, for example, a Xhosa woman, a Xhosa woman who is making the Xhosa clothes, for example, who is starting a small industry in South Africa for our clothes, she may be making probably 1,000 clothes in a day. But a Chinese company that is doing the cloth and industry might be making even 100,000 clothes in a day. Now, you cannot, and I think that's very important, you cannot expect that the Xhosa woman will be selling the clothes, the Xhosa attire, the same price as a Chinese. But then where is the government role coming in? Because if the government cannot protect the Xhosa woman and say there's an open market and a free market, and no brother Cook has joined us here as an economy, you cannot say that it's a free market where industries that are small and medium enterprise industries are trying to survive, they're trying to set up, are getting a competition from global industries in the country. And the government allows that. Would that then happen? It means that the small, medium enterprises will not survive, because the giant in the industry will survive when they kill the industry. And then when the giants survive, then the government legislation and laws make it very expensive for other industries to survive. So I think, for example, look, for example, in Kenya, I bought one of the kitenge clothes. There's some clothes I do put on in African attire. So when I went in the city of Nairobi, I looked for all the shops. There's a shop that I first came across. In fact, they were not even readily available. When I went to the first shop, I walked in, I saw some African ladies there. So I decided to buy the attire. When I was going to pay, then an Indian man came in to receive the money. And I was like, was it an Indian shop? And yes, it turned out to be an Indian shop. I had already bought the product, so I had to pay. Now, when I went to the market other days, in the same market where people are selling the same African wear clothes, Do you know what the African women were selling it at? What I bought at 700 shillings Kenya shillings, in the African market it was being sold 1,500 shillings, 1,500 shillings. And some of the African women actually end up buying the same product from these Indians and go sell it expensively. It's like a second-hand business. So buy it from here, go sell it from there. That's something we are very good at, Africa. We don't invest in manufacturing of industries. We invest in being a middleman. So I'll go buy the product from Coco's industry and go sell it to Ras Pala and make my profit in between. So I'm looking for that profit margin. And this is the problem all over, you see. So the industries may not survive because there's unfair competition. And that's why sometimes our countries sign trade agreements, like for example, Kenya signed trade agreements, and you open up your market with the trade agreement. So we are going to export this. We are going to like the AGOA or the STIP agreement we had. How can a developing country, as you say, brother Sir Windows, how can a developing country have an equal agreement with the developed country for industrial exploitation? For example, how much does it cost even to come up with a mining industry in South Africa? Very expensive. So how many people in South Africa can afford that? Only the whites, who maybe have money from somewhere else. But why is the government not making it very cheap or even giving support to small medium enterprises so that they can have the ability to grow to be big companies? The government doesn't care about that. In fact, the government tax more of the small medium enterprises and give more tax holidays to the big industries. And in that way, the big industries enjoy more profit and less taxation, and the small industries that are upcoming face a lot of taxation with less profit. So these are the challenges we are facing in the continental region. And that's why you're saying, the leadership is very important to protect. As you can see, we have a lot of resources. We have a market that is ready. 1.4 billion market is ready to buy the products and the resources from our industry. What you need is somehow capital support and government policy support. And that's what I'm thinking about. But let me hear what Elder Sam has to say on this conversation. Elder Sam?
Brother Pigeon and everybody in the platform, thanks. I was wondering when I was listening to this topic that are we aware that we are always coming back to the same point where we have passed previously? You know, we always come to the point that we can't do anything unless the neo-colonial leadership that is in power in our countries has been deposed from power. And that is why we are all saying uhuru to the what is happening in the Sahel area, because all the ideas that we want to implement, as long as it is under this leadership, there's nothing that is going to happen. All what you are saying is correct. Our government don't protect, because they are protecting the big powers that are still ruling our countries. So they have nothing to do with Brother Pigeon trying to do a business on a small stage. You know, in South Africa, it is worse. All those big monopolies that have been in business in South Africa have now come even into our local, what we call townships. In the townships, the new government is not establishing Mutau, Mapena establishment. All the big malls that we are building, even in the townships, they are still owned by the same big monopolists that are either in the mining conglomerate or in the textile industries and so forth in South Africa. So that challenge we cannot run away from. But I think the discussion that we are now establishing, as from Brother Ananaki's analogy, that if we start to have this mind change, we should start to see that self-reliance is where we start. We should start to see that, you know, I was shocked now when the tariffs, America introduced these high tariffs against almost all the countries of the world. I only find out now that then that Lesotho is exporting most of the jeans that goes to America and come back to us in South Africa called Lewis Strauss Lewis, and so forth. But they come from Lesotho, and Lesotho is the major partner with America in terms of those jeans. And we in South Africa, we just think these things come from America. So until we on the African continent start to realize that we need to be business amongst ourselves, and we must first make sure that the people who are in power are for whatever we are planning. Thanks.
Thank you, Elder Sam. I think you're driving us to something that we must agree to focus our attention on. That instead of focusing too much on the unification of Africa, why don't we focus on the liberation of Africa first? Because why don't we then have platforms on how we discuss strategies on how to liberate Africa? Because an Africa that is not liberated is hard to unify. An Africa that is not liberated, then look at the angles of liberation, just beyond neo-colonial. Liberation from oligarchs of our countries, liberation from tribal cocoons of politics, liberation from economic dominance, liberation from all those elements we want to talk about. Because then you see all these elements of how unite and develop Africa, the unification and development of Africa will be embedded on an unliberated Africa. For example, what you're saying, look at what the Sahel has been doing. The Sahel has come up with a tomato industry. And they're having even a car manufacturing industry, electric car industry in 2 years. Why? Because it's liberated. But countries that are not liberated, even if they have a manufacturing industry, like in Kenya, we have what you call vehicle assembly center for Toyota. Toyota, I don't know if it's for Japan or China. The Toyota company is in Kenya here. And all they do is just to assemble. And you're told, oh, made in Kenya. How is it made in Kenya? The engines and everything else were brought from all abroad, and then they were just assembled here. I know Tanzania and some other countries that, Uganda and some other countries that claim they have vehicle manufacturing in their country. But if you look at the reality, those even companies that own those vehicles are not for Africans. The white men that have their plant in those countries that manufacture vehicles, when you say, I'm driving a vehicle made in Africa. Really made in Africa or assembled in Africa? And made by who? The whole engineers that work in those farms, like the vehicle manufacturing industry, are Africans here. But who is the owner of the vehicle company? It's not even government. It's some private sector. So let me hear what Brother Coco has to say on this. In fact, I'm also surprised that you're saying the Lewis jeans is actually from Lesotho. Brother Coco.
Revolutionary greetings, comrades.
Yeah, greetings, comrade.
I hadn't planned to talk today. I just wanted to listen and hear what others are contributing. But now you're provoking me. But that's okay. Ndadimutau is my brother. He is in South Africa, but I am in Lesotho. But if we start to trace everything, you'll find that we come from the same family, clans. In fact, we have a shoot to start with. So you can see from there. So when you start from that position, you realize that it makes economic sense to trade together as a clan, as a nation. But we don't do that because one part of the clan of the nation is fenced in within a small portion of land. It calls itself an independent kingdom there. And another portion of that nation is within a conglomerate of all other nations called South Africa. So what am I saying here? I'm saying you cannot look at economics from just economic lens alone. It's bigger than that. It's important to have a wider perspective on these things. And so let me digress. Having said that, you're talking about government not protecting the small, medium enterprises. And in the session that we attended, Jose Santiago referenced FDI, because FDI gets protected. Why does FDI get preferential treatment? FDI gets preferential treatment again, stemming from the Roman Dutch law, where the hierarchy has ensured that their rights, their privileges, and everything else are protected. It's an international rule, international rules and regulations, law and order. That's what the United States is doing. The United States is doing that, going around the world and trying to institute a system of neocolonialism using the money that they've printed in America. So for a country such as Lesotho, which for its size, it cannot compete with anyone. So Lesotho, we are autonomous politically as we speak, but economically, we are 80%, 80 to 90%, or even to 100% dependent on South Africa. So that is the reality of this. But when we decide we are going to be autonomous politically, then what it does, it gives the Americans an opportunity to come to the back door of South Africa and come into Lesotho. I saw the army in Lesotho at one point posting the pictures they had when they celebrated joint military exercises with the USA. And usually the army, all their publicity is done in Lesotho, but that day it was done in English. And I queried this. I said, why? What's happening today? What's so special? Is that it's neocolonialism coming in its own ways, in own quiet, subversive way. So this system, Brother Pigden, is the same thing. The same thing. It works in different ways, but it's the same thing. So there's a hierarchy at the top, and then within that hierarchy, the owner of the capital, he can buy the government in the countries, the smaller countries which are not powerful, which are not really sovereign governments. So if you go into government, you have already been bought, and you will be able to, you're going to sort of do the bidding of that monopoly capital. It doesn't matter who says what in the nation. You don't care about the small, medium enterprises, because they are small in terms of what they contribute to your campaign. So in the end, the democracy that you see is actually a battle of oligarchies. What is happening in America right now, what you saw with the Republicans and the Democrats, Donald Trump versus Biden, or maybe Kamala, is again a manifestation of how oligarchies work. It's a system which is unassailable for anyone else except those with money. So when you are a small, medium enterprise, you think it's a fair competition, but it's not a fair competition. It just depends who has more money.
But
if you have more money, you can influence lots and lots of things that happens.
But Brother Coco,
yeah.
Is it that the small industries are the ones that can evolve to be big industries? What you call small enterprises? Because if you have to build the industrial capacity of Africa or industrial development, so everything starts from that small, whatever you call it, is a small, medium enterprise, or you call it a medium enterprise. It will evolve to industry. But what is lacking is there an environment now for this small business or enterprise to thrive to be a bigger industry? That's the big problem.
Yes. No, thank you, my brother. It's a good question. It leads me to the next point. Is how do we get out of the shadow of the multinational corporations? Those multinational corporations, we can beat them if we come together and sort of build cooperatives, build the corporations from the ground up. But the problem is where we are right now. We are living in a dog-eat-dog world, which is capitalism. The minute you start to do well, they are going to buy you out. They're going to buy you out. And again, it's another Western corporation. And where did these Western corporations get the money from? From exploitation of either the Africans or other third world countries. Say India, you know how India was exploited. You know how America was exploited, the Latin America. It's a cyclical system that works like that. But that doesn't say you Africans stop progressing. It says, think carefully about how you progress this. And importantly, is the production, manufacturing, and creative industries. You need to be building your own things. Learn to build from the ground. The problem is
it yours?
we don't.
Huh?
The problem is we don't build. We take what others are doing and we try to get the value between by value add. In fact, we don't even add value, because as you made that example of the women in Kenya, where they buy from the Indian and just add a markup and sell the same thing just because they know where to get it cheaper and sell it. So such companies, such practices, they undermine the productive capacities within our countries themselves. And that's why it's easy to dump the products which come from Western countries into our economies, because we take the genes which are used here, or the trainers which are used here, and sell them cheaper in Africa at the cheaper price. So whatever is produced in Africa, in the end, it becomes unaffordable. So this is something which we have to think carefully about. We have to sort of come together and come up with something that works for all of us. And I've been trying to put together that cooperatives, a system of cooperatives where we need to own our own means of production, and we need to consume what we produce, and we need to sell what we produce. Or if we don't sell what we don't consume what we produce, then we need to barter with our brothers around. We need to start looking locally, source locally, think African, think African first. I think South Africa has something like that. Think South Africa. But I don't know how much that's still working now, because now America is starting to force everyone else to buy America. So it's a whole lot of a subject which we cannot sort of put into one small hour. It's something which we need to sit down and work. We need to work. We need to get down to business and decide. We need to put our monies where our mouths are, or use our hands and produce stuff. We need to learn to produce. We need to relearn the production process. It's something which we haven't done as Africans. We have either been undercut at the top from agricultural production, or if we had manufacturing, again, they have sold for cheaper price, which our manufacturing is, useless. Or in the case of Lesotho is producing for the firms in the USA, not instead of producing for the firms in South Africa, or producing for the consumers in the region, or even in Lesotho itself. So it's a question of, why are we only able to produce for Americans? Why can't we produce for consumers in Lesotho? Why can't we produce for consumers in the region, in Southern Africa? It's a big question, which I don't have an answer to at the moment. But that's how neocolonialism works. Because if they close the tap, if they want to close the tap, they do that easily. That's how Elon Musk got the license to operate this Starlink in Lesotho, because he said we're going to put those tariffs in Lesotho.
Okay, Brother Coco, thank you so much, and thank you for trying to contribute as well, despite of you having been engaged somehow for long. I'm still also here very strong, keeping on to move. But we have an economist in the room as well, Brother Kwame. Please welcome, Brother Kwame. We are looking at this industrial development. We are looking at the statistics on how it looks like. It's not looking good in the continent. We are looking at the gaps, the challenges we face, and the key issues that are coming up on whether are we really able to develop industries? Because today I only see people building real estate. There's a real apartment after apartment after apartment after apartment, and others are building big supermarket, big malls, big malls. I don't see anybody investing on maybe agricultural industry or avocado industry or banana industry. It's only big apartments and big supermarkets and big malls. I don't know where we are moving as a continent. Please, Brother Kwame, please come in. Brother,
Can you hear me okay?
yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm in the train, so you may get interruptions. I joined not too long ago, so I'm not abreast with the discussions so far. I've heard two things. Well, I've seen and heard two things. I've heard what Brother Koko had to say. He's talked about some of the challenges, or the challenges that we face, and the need for us to work very hard if we want to change things. And then I'm reading what's on the screen. And what I can see on the screen is manufacturing value added, capacity utilization, employment, and export contribution. Then below that, I can see key gaps, and some of them are infrastructure deficits, skills shortage, access to finance, technology lag, and so on. Brother Pigeon, can you scroll up so I can see the heading for under which manufacturing value added comes? Right, industrial capacity. And before that, what's before that?
No,
Current state of industrial development in Africa. So where is this document from?
No, I'm the one who did this short presentation for that. I've just prepared for around 10 minutes.
That's
for the class.
Yeah,
I was
fine.
just doing some. I was doing just some statistical analysis.
Interesting. So, I think your presentation is what led to Brother Koko's, Brother Koko's contribution. So, thank you both for your presentations. As I'm on the train, it's 8:30. We only have about half an hour to go. So I don't know who else has spoken, who hasn't spoken. But what I would like to notice or to note is the very small number of us on this call, on this conference or this meeting, which is 8 of us only. Now that's very worrying. If we've sent out, I take it we've sent out our poster, our presentation, our invite, and yet we have only been able to generate 8 of us to be interested, whereas other topics have attracted more people. So is it the way do we have less people because of the way we sold today, or is it the fact that our people simply not interested in industrial development, or have our people given up on industrial development? So what will be the reason for just 8 of us being on a Zoom meeting discussing such an important topic? That is the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say, which I want to end with,
we've lost you.
You haven't lost me. I heard, can I interrupt? So I'm expecting the chair to say something, but he's not saying anything.
The chair seems to have left this place.
Okay, so let me continue then.
But can we answer you about why there's so few, possibly?
Yeah, I was asking. This was me thinking out aloud. I'm not asking for an answer. I'm just saying that.
Well, there are quite a few things going on today. Like there's been a big One Map Africa conference. JC has their monthly meeting. And then there's this as well. So lots of Zooms on today would be one of the reasons. Thank you.
Right. So One Map Africa is more important than industrial development. That's what it means. There are people talking about One Map Africa. For them, it's maybe just as important as industrial development. Or
no, it's been on since 12 o'clock this morning.
Yes, so I understand.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks for that. So the other thing I wanted to say is, Brother Coco, you said you wanted to interrupt. I'm happy if you want to say something now before I go into my second point. Brother Coco?
No, Sister Ida has responded to you, so that's sufficient.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So my second point, which I want to make, is on a broader question of, in terms of industrial development. It's on the question of global capital. Global capital is very, very powerful, and it controls finance. It controls manufacturing. It controls minerals extraction. It controls even estate development. It controls the consumer industry. It controls everything. And within global capital itself, intra sub-capitals or sub-capital groups that are competing with sorry, I'm in a train, so you can hear the train. So I hope that is not stopping from hearing what I'm saying. So within global capital is these sub-capital groups, and these capital groups are national. So, for example, you have German capital, you have English capital, you have Russian capital, you have Iranian capital, you have Israeli capital, you have, and so on and so forth. These the global capital has roots in national boundaries. And can you just give me a moment, please? I need to show my ticket to just give me a moment, please. Sorry, he's moved away, so I'll come back to the presentation. Yeah, so the capitalists themselves, as you know, are battling or fight amongst themselves for control. And as you know, the most powerful group in global capital is American capital. And American capital, as you know, controls European capital, or they dictate to European capital. And as you know, it's American capital that wanted to split Russia into balkanized states, so that, like vultures, they can take over Russia's resources. And the whole Ukraine war, as you would know, is because of that. Because Ukraine itself, as an state, is very, very rich, and Europeans want Ukrainian the Ukrainian state as part of the EU. Russia is not saying that the Ukrainian state must come under Russian control, but what they are saying is that the Ukrainian state must not come under European control. That they must
Brother Kwame?
Sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Brother Kwame.
Okay. Okay. Right. So can I continue?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay. So part of global capital is the arms industry, or what is called the military industrial complex. And that arm of global capital is very, very powerful and is very, very profitable. And so that's why you see a lot of wars and battles and so on, because they produce weapons that they want to test, or they want to use, or they want to sell, and so on. What Africa is facing, Africa has no real capital base. You understand? There is no capital, because you recall that when we looked at last week, when we looked at economic the economic aspects. I'm trying to remember the title of last week's session. I think it was economic harmonization. When we looked at that, you recall that one of the things that came out was the fact that Africa is losing about 100 billion a year. We're just losing that kind of funds out of the continent through all kinds of networks, including criminal networks. So if you multiply 100 billion by 10, that's 10 years. We are talking about 10,000 billion dollars has left the continent in the last 10 years alone. Now, you will all agree with me that that money has gone somewhere. That money has gone to someone, somewhere. It is certainly not on the African continent, right? So what it means is that the extraction of surplus value from the neo-colonial territories of Africa is on such a vast scale that Africa is not in a position to accumulate the kind of capital needed to industrialize. That is the situation we face. And our elites who are running the neo-colonial states at the moment are not really interested in Africa's industrial development for all kinds of reasons. One of them is that global capital will not allow them to invest or to compete with them in the most profitable areas of any African economy. All right? They will not let them. Even if they try, they'll be told, don't go there. They don't come and tell us this, but we know that is what happens behind closed doors. And so this is what we face. Now, what is the solution? The solution is a unified Africa. Why? Because only a continental government on the African soil can take on global capital at that level. Lesotho cannot do that. South Africa cannot do that. Kenya cannot do that. Ghana can. Even Traore's Burkina Faso and the Sahelian states cannot take on global capital. They can't. So it is the continental government of Africa that can take on global capital. Even that is not going to be a walk in the park, because they are very, very powerful, but not insurmountable. So when we are talking about industrial development, we're talking about to industrialize Africa. Let's remember that American capital was instrumental in in the industrialization of China, right? A lot of American companies, American capital, if you like, divested from the United States because they could see that they could make more profit producing in China and selling back to America and the developed world. And so they relocated to China. All this talk about make America great again is about this very issue. So one of the key issues is that some of the elites like Trump have not been happy with how American capital has moved jobs and skills and knowledge to China. And they feel that China has given an edge over American capital. And they're really scared that if nothing is done, Chinese capital will be so powerful that it will be more powerful than American capital. So what we have in the world today, as you can see, are two big blocks now fighting over who they are competing over the extraction of resources out of Africa. There's on the one hand the NATO nations, with America leading it, and then on the other hand are the BRICS nations, and the African elites are divided. Some are on the side of the NATO group, the NATO in America, like the King of Morocco in the north, and some all the way to the south, like South Africa, are on the side of BRICS. You see, so this is the division we have now, and both camps are fighting over who will control the world's resources, and the world's resources that they want to control are on our soil. You see, so brothers and sisters, when we are talking about industrial development, these are the challenges that we face. Please hold on.
Brother Kwame?
No, I said please hold on. I didn't want the announcement to enter. So this is what we face. And talking about small businesses, medium-sized businesses, please, when we are talking about industrial development of Africa, let's forget about small businesses, medium-sized. That is not the issue. The issue is Africa as one nation, which is yet to come into being, taking on global capital and forcing its way to put industries in Africa, whether or not global capital likes it or not. This is what we are facing. And we're not talking about small businesses. That's not what we are talking about here. So please, when we're having this discussion, forget about small businesses, medium-sized enterprises. Those are not the issues here. Those are, if you like, minor capital, players of capital. And the capital they are playing with are not huge. You understand? In this scheme of things, even 10 million is peanuts. You understand? What we are talking about, yeah? 50 million US dollars is peanuts. That is nothing. When we are talking about what we are talking about industrial development. So let's please move away from small businesses, medium-sized enterprises. And I think Brother Koko has drawn our attention to the fact that those are not things that we should even realize that they may not even work anyway, because like Brother Koko was saying, they will just buy you out. I mean, and that's not an African thing. Even here in Europe, in America, they buy out small businesses all the time. When they see you have a certain skill set they like, they will buy you out. They'll buy you out. So, brothers and sisters, what we are talking about is a story on an African scale, yeah, nationalizing the cells of what we might call the building cells of new colonialism. Those are the mines. We nationalize all the mines on the continent, yeah, we throw out those who are not prepared to work with us, like Traore did on an African scale. That is what we are talking about here. Let me pause there because of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Coco.
Thanks, brothers. I wholeheartedly agree with what my brother said. I just wanted to add and sort of reorient our minds and remember why we were colonized in the first place. We were colonized for different reasons, but I think the key one was the cheap raw materials, the exploitation of the abundance of Africa. All right. So they continue to do that. And even after independence, they continue.
Brother Coco. Brother Coco, is it that I'm losing you?
Let me see. Give me a second.
No, now you're okay, but
You're right. He went silent. Yeah.
But now you're okay. Brother Coco, try. Okay. Brother Coco, permit me to allow Sister Ida to come in, then I'll come back to you because of time. Sister Ida?
Hello. Am I still on?
Yeah, you're on. You can proceed. We are having
Okay.
a few minutes, then I get to Sister Ida. Proceed.
Yes. Let me just take 2 minutes to remind you that the reason why Africa has remained less powerful, poor, divided, not united, is because we are a source of raw materials. We continue to provide those cheap raw materials to them. And then they add value to whatever products we give them, and then they sell them back at the higher value. So it's I don't even know what you call this cycle, the cycle of exploitation. Cycle of exploitation in terms of what we sell to them at cheap prices. And then another exploitation because we buy from them the same thing which we could have added value to them and created employment for our people and sold it back to them at a higher price. So it's a cycle of exploitation which continues in Africa. And that will continue as long as they want. But that's what Dr. Nkumo had identified a long time ago, was say, unite now as a unit, become powerful, and you can negotiate better. You can do all of these things, the economic integration and everything, monetary union, the currency, everything will follow once you have united, once we have that political unity. We never managed to get that political unity. So I know why we are all here discussing all of this is because Africans leaders are not doing it. African Union is not doing it. But this is a challenge. It's a big challenge because we are fighting against the monopoly capital, a global monopoly capital. And then we are fighting against their puppets in Africa. And we are also fragmented. So we have to think carefully about how we do this. And if we go via the economic way, we need to unite. No matter how small we are, if we can unite, even an ants, when they are in unity, they can bring down an elephant. So we need to think about that. This is a strategy we need to be looking towards. But we have to be of a realization that the ultimate goal is a political union, because without that, our struggle continues. Thank you.
Thank you. Sister Ida?
In the GAC monthly meeting, they had they were having a discussion about the Mau Mau and how they're being dispossessed of their land. And we were told that the Mau Mau land is roughly the size of London.
Sister Ida?
Can you not hear me? Hello, can you not hear me?
Sister Ida?
Yes.
It is Masai, not Mau Mau, Masai.
Oh, sorry, Masai. Did I say Mau Mau? I'm sorry. Okay, about the Masai people being them trying to steal their land and give it to some royal family in Saudi Arabia or around there. And I think it sounds exactly what you, brother Kwame and brother Coco have been talking about, in that they, if they can displace people and then claim the land, they can then either decide whatever they want to do with it, whether they want to industrialize it, even though they say, oh, it's all going to be for to stop. Oh, they have all sorts of excuses as to why they want the land, whether it's environmental, and then they'll use it as carbon credits or whatever. But the fact is that they are displacing Africans, and then they're not even giving them what they promise in any way. So I think that it's all much of the same of what you've been talking about tonight, and I just thought I'd mention it because if it, there are other land grabs that have been going on around the world, and we tend not to always link them. But I think we can link it with what you've been talking about tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, our presenters. Unfortunately, we are almost to our time. We have 2 minutes to go, and we will just bring the meeting to an end very closely. So, but we'll get the next topic for the next week now. Of course, as you've said, we are a bit few based on also maybe other people on other commitments. But permit me to say that, Brother Coco, do you want to come in on those legacy hand? Brother Coco? Okay. Yeah, I think Brother Com is drawing our attention to the big things. Maybe our problem has been to look for small things when people discuss big things. But at the end of the day, is that on the top of everything else is the control of the global market on how the industry operates and the rest. Because, for example, if you ask yourself how many industries are in China, and you compare to how many industries do you have, you realize that all of Africa combined cannot even have big industries like what is alone in China. Now, when Burkina Faso try to build big industries and take control, and that's what I was saying sometimes, we also need to look at the element of liberation, because with this neo-colonial control states, it's very hard even of you to think about those industries. Even if they exist, they're not probably controlled by Africans. And it's a global market and their global agenda that then controls our industries. But yes, it's a call up to us that we need to think of industries as a means of our survival, as a means of production. Because if you don't think about how we produce what we eat, or how do we use what we have, then we have a problem. So we cannot develop Africa if we still continue to do the export of raw materials. And with that, comments permit me to bring this to an end. But I'm trying to look for the topic for next week, Brother Kwame. I'll be able to read it. I know you're traveling, but I'll be able to share the topic for next week as an invite as early as Monday. I'm promising that so that you can do it in advance, so that you can be prepared to be ready with our next topic for our conversation. The recordings of this week still will be available next week. The recording of last week are already available. And yes, we continue our Thursday conversation as usual. And please, if you get time, just join us anytime you can on Thursdays or on the Saturdays. So once again, back to you, Brother Kwame.
Yeah, the topic for next Saturday is agricultural transformation. Agricultural transformation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll be able to share that in advance, probably on Monday or Tuesday later, so that you can be prepared in advance. And if you want to present to us anything on that line, I know Gerard Unaki does a lot on agricultural level, but if you are an expert or an expert on agricultural transformation on agriculture, please get in touch with us and let us recommend that person so that we can have a presentation on that day. Brother Kwame, do you have any other thing to say?
No, just to say thank you all for coming. It's been wonderful. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, comrades, and let us meet again on the coming week. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thank you.